Okay, so in this video, we are actually going to start painting the specular map, and that map is going to tell Blender where we want specular highlights and where we don't want the specular highlights. So as you can see, I basically have chosen the grayish color. I have forgotten the value. You can just go back the video and see it. And I also have just filled up the color as we have done before. So you already know how it works, right? And now what we are going to do, we are actually just going to paint with white wherever we want more spec, and we are going to paint with black wherever we want less spec. So I think this should actually be pretty simple. Now if I were to give you an example, the lips are going to be whiter because the lips are going to be shinier. Cheek area is going to be darker because that particular area is going to be less specular. So that's what we are going to be doing, and let's actually just get started. So first thing first, as you can see, I already had the brushes that we have created, and also this is the second file. This is actually a separate file. I am not like just painting on top, because just in case if I were to feel like that I need to change something in the color, I can just go back to the color file. So this is totally a different file, and now in this particular case, as you can see, in the eye bag area, I was thinking of removing the specular highlights. That's why I'm actually painting it with black. So you get the idea, wherever there is gonna be black, we are not really going to get that much of spec. And wherever there is going to be white, we are just going to get a whole lot of spec. Not a whole lot of, obviously, more spec. So as you can see, I am actually removing the spec from the inside of the nose, and the reason is whenever you introduce spec, you basically start getting the fireflies or the noise. So I basically want to just remove the spec wherever I don't really need to have it. So basically, in this case, we are not really going to be seeing the inside of the nose, and because of that, I am actually just removing it. Also, wherever there is gonna be the facial hairs, the spike is gonna be less in that particular area as well. That's why you're gonna see that wherever a male person basically grows the facial hairs, for example, in this case, the mustache and the beard, you can clearly see that I'm actually painting that particular area with black. So this is actually kind of important. I mean, you obviously can just try yourself. The neck is gonna be blackish as well, because obviously the hairs also grows on the neck. And yeah, these are some of the stuff. In my case, because I am not really gonna be seeing the ears as much, so I am also gonna paint that black as well. The top of the head is also gonna be black. Again, I am just removing all the specular highlights wherever I don't really need it, just so that there won't be any problem with the render. And in this particular case, because I'm not gonna be seeing the hairs, not the hairs, but the ears and the top of the head, so I am actually just removing all the speck by painting it with black. So now you can see that I have actually started painting the forehead, but I am also gonna start adding a little bit of variation into it, so it's not obviously the final color, and you're gonna see in the future that I'll actually start adding small little details as well, so that we basically can get as much variation as we possibly can. Right now, I am actually just blocking out the colors. There isn't really anything like super different that I'm doing. I'm just blocking out the colors, just like I've done. I like approached the base color. I am basically doing the same thing here. So the approach is again the same. Just blocking out the bigger shapes first, and you can see that I'm actually just adding a little bit of black almost everywhere now, but not as intense that I've actually added in the other areas. In the lips, the intensity of the black is not as much as I thought it was, because in the flat, the flat view, you can see how exactly the colors are looking, and obviously you're gonna get all these files, so you can just check out how exactly the maps are looking. So this is also gonna be nicer for you to see it yourself. And now you can see that I've actually started using the whites. Obviously the nose is gonna be shinier, eyelids are gonna be shinier, the lips are gonna be shinier, the cheeks are gonna be shinier. So these are all the stuff where I'm actually just gonna start adding the whites, as you can clearly see. But yeah, right now we are in the blocking phase. In the future we are also gonna be start blending the colors, so that the transition between the shiny and the non-shiny part would actually look nicer. And yeah, in this case the eyelids are actually gonna be pure white, because we basically wanna get tear line kind of feel in the eyelids. So make sure that you basically paint like pure white into the eyelids, and I am actually gonna do that right now. I'm just marking out the stuff so that I can go into the flat view and just start painting it. Just make sure that eyelids are like white, don't let them be gray. As you can see that I'm actually just doing with higher intensity, so that no area would actually left behind that is not white. In the eyelid part, again, this is just me, painting the eyelid, so I have no idea what to say. But yes, the eyelid is gonna be shiny, the lips, and just look at the reference, by the way. Sometimes you will see that people are sweating, for example. Sometimes you are gonna see that you won't really be able to see any of the reflection on the face. So it totally depends. Maybe the person is sweating, maybe the person is not sweating, maybe the skin is like super dry. This particular area is also going to be shinier. We've already seen that in the reference. So that is going to be white, obviously. And yeah, just look at your reference and see which part is going to be specular. In my case, I've told you. Usually, what happens is the lips are actually one of the shinier parts. The nose is also one of the shinier parts, and the eyelids are obviously needs to be shiny. You can see that I'm actually adding the whites wherever, like in the area where the lips are basically intersecting, so that I can basically give the feel of saliva over there. So that's basically what we are doing right now. We've already talked about it. This part is actually a bit smoother and shinier. In this particular case, I need to, go into the sculpt and make this particular part a bit smooth. Right now, we have a little bit of sculpt detail, but yeah, I can actually just go back to the sculpting and smooth that particular part out. You can clearly see that the intensity of the whites and the black also matters a lot. I'm not like making it super white, because that's just gonna be like maybe a wet skin kind of a feel, and we don't really want that. So make sure that the intensity that you're using for your specular map is actually believable. For example, in the eyelid, you can clearly see how white the eyelid is, but we cannot actually make any other part as much white as we have in our eyelids. So make sure that you actually do some test renders to figure out if the spec map is working or not. Now, in this particular case, I don't think in this video I am actually gonna be doing any of the specular renders or anything. Or maybe I am gonna do, I actually cannot remember. You've already seen me doing so many test renders that I figured out that it's just gonna be, overwhelming for you to see me keep on doing the renders. The workflow is something that I've already talked about, and that is also one of those things that I want you to do it on your own, because that way you're gonna be able to judge it a bit better. Okay, so now in this case, in just for the sake of adding variation, you can see that I am actually adding these white spots. And the idea is pretty simple. The idea is first to create randomness. The second is to create small little specular highlights across all the areas. And you're going to realize one thing, these specular highlights, these specular dots that I'm adding, they are not really going to take over the overall color. So, for example, you can see that the eye bags are a bit darker, and even after adding these dots, you're gonna realize that eye bags are still gonna be the darker area. So make sure that these dots that we are adding does not like take over the bigger colors that we have already added there. As you can see that even though we have these small little specular dots, they are not overtaking the color beneath. Make sure that you actually keep the beneath color intact. This is actually pretty much it. This is, I think, the last step. I don't know if I actually do a test render after creating this specular map, but this is basically how the specular map looks. This is just the workflow. Like, there isn't really anything in terms of workflow that I need to talk about. I've already talked about everything, like how we are going to approach and everything. So you can clearly see like the color beneath these dots are still there, and you can tell that the eye bags are a bit darker and the eyelids are actually brighter. Again, the purpose of adding these dots is just to create randomness, and I am actually again just running out of things to say. So I am just gonna let you watch the video now, and I'll just keep quiet. I am actually back. Obviously, this video is not over, but I'm still here, and I just wanna say this is pretty much the workflow. And this is actually one of the simpler things that we have done in this entire course, maybe other than making curricula. But yeah, that's pretty much the workflow. And now you can see that I'm also like using the black color, and I have actually started adding the blacks. The idea is again pretty simple. The idea is to just add the variation. You can clearly see, but yeah, the base color should not actually change. Otherwise, the overall spec value is gonna change, and in the end, it's gonna be weird to look at. But yes, after you are done with the spec map, which is pretty easy to paint out, actually, you can see. Just start doing test renders, and if you were to feel like that you need more spec, then just go back to that area and start adding the whites. And if you feel like that you actually don't want as much spec that you have basically gotten, then just go back to the same area and start adding the blacks. I am back, and the reason is we are actually kind of done with the specular map at this point. Now we are just gonna start doing some test render, and as you can see that I've actually plugged in the map into the specular slot. The roughness is 0.12 right now, and you can see how it is looking. So the idea is pretty simple. Let me just lower down the color so that we can actually see. So you can clearly see how much spec we are getting, and in the tier line we are actually getting this much spec. In the nose we are getting this much spec. Like, how do I explain that much or this much? Basically, you can see how much spec you have in particular areas. So let's just say that you don't really want any of the spec in the cheek area. You can actually just go back and start painting it with black. But yeah, this is basically how the map is looking. And let me just see if I can show you the difference between the white and black. I mean, one of the first difference that you can clearly see is in the eyelid area. The eyelid is pretty much pretty much glass like or maybe water like spec. So yeah, you can clearly see. And if I were to start increasing the contrast, you're gonna be able to see the. Okay, wait. Am I gonna? Okay, if I were to increase the contrast, maybe you can see that we are actually getting less spec on the eye bag area. It is hard to tell because the roughness is low. I don't know if you can actually tell it or not. But yeah, if you were to just use a roughness map, you'll be able to tell. But I know it is kind of hard to tell, but you can still kind of see it. Maybe actually try increasing the contrast to actually see the difference. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the specular map. And now I am actually just gonna see you in the next video. So yeah.